Jermall Charlo from Houston, Texas, the Hitman, is a really good fighter in my opinion. He's got 30 wins, 0 losses with 22 KOs. He's the WBC champion at middleweight right now, and he wants a big fight with either Golovkin or Canelo. The only problem is that these guys barely even know who he is. If you look at Canelo's last 5 or 6 fights, you'll see that there's a pattern. He only fights people if they have a big name that he can make a big fight off of, or if they have something that he might want, like some kind of status or some kind of title. For example, like Kovalev, it was the fourth title in the fourth division. Rocky Fielding, that was his third title in the third division. So these are things that are interest Canelo for his legacy. Charlo doesn't have anything that Canelo wants. I mean, that WBC title, he doesn't want that. I mean, we don't even know if Canelo's gonna ever fight at 160 anymore. Right now, Charlo doesn't have a big name. He's not gonna bring a lot of eyes to the fight, a lot of attention at all. Let me elaborate more on Canelo's past 6 opponents. So, Sergey Kovalev, obviously he had a big name, and Canelo saw an opportunity there to make a big fight. I'm sure DAZN was happy about that. Before that, it was Daniel Jacobs. Jacobs also at the time had a big name. He was the either number 2 or 3rd best fighter at middleweight at the time. So it was either GGG, Canelo, or Jacobs. Before that, it was Rocky Fielding, and the only reason why he fought Rocky Fielding was, in my opinion, I think it was to get accustomed to the higher weight classes and to pick up that WBA title. Before that, it was Gennady Golovkin, and a lot of people think that he was forced into that fight by the pressure from the fans. Maybe that could be true, but either way, GGG had a huge name. There was a lot of pressure on him to take that fight. Before that, it was Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. He doesn't have any type of title or any status or anything like that, but he is a big name, and that fight did get a lot of views. So that was something that Canelo was interested in. And let me also elaborate on me saying that Charlo has no name, because obviously he has a lot of fans, especially on social media, especially on YouTube and the YouTube comments. There's a lot of people, and there's a whole community that backs him. The LDBC community, they back him 100% no matter what. So he does have a little bit of fame on social media, but that fame does not translate to views on television, and it does not translate on people buying tickets to go see him live. So that social media stuff, like Canelo, that doesn't interest Canelo. It doesn't interest pretty much anybody that wants to make money off of a fight. I'm sure DAZN also doesn't mind that Canelo's not going to fight Charlo. So that's that. I mean, we could look at Charlo's last fight with Hogan. I mean, just check out this tweet by Mike Coppinger, and a lot of people trust his numbers. A lot of people hold him in high regard. He came out with the number of 249,000 views, and I mean, that's pretty low. That's like pay-per-view numbers. And this was not a pay-per-view event. It was just a regular fight on Showtime. So I mean, this guy doesn't really bring any attention. I mean, that could have been because it was the same day as the Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua rematch, but it wasn't at the same time, so it wasn't like they were directly competing with each other. And if you'll remember, also Canelo went to see the fight, went to see the Ruiz fight, so that lets you know how much Charlo is on Canelo's mind, which is pretty much nothing. You know, he would rather go all the way to Saudi Arabia to support Ruiz rather than to keep an eye on a possible opponent in a weight class that sometimes he fights at. You know, so yeah, right now I think Charlo is not even on Canelo's radar. Also, about that WCB belt that Charlo has, I mean, it was pretty much just given to him, you know, like he pretty much just magically came upon it when the WBC decided to elevate Canelo to the franchise champ, which I don't agree with. I think it's bullshit. But pretty much Charlo has not beaten anyone in the ring to get that title. So I mean, it's kind of harsh to say, but that is the definition of a paper champion. Someone who is only a champion on paper, who never fought a champion to get the belt, you know. So, and like I said, Canelo doesn't care about that belt. I mean, he doesn't care about unifying the middleweight division anymore. I think he has kind of surpassed that. I mean, it doesn't matter whether he would have a belt or not, he's still going to get huge numbers. You know, he can say F you to any of the sanctioning bodies. He doesn't have to be fighting for a title, and he'll still get a shitload of views. So really, Charlo doesn't have anything that Canelo wants. Now, what can Charlo do about this? There is something, in my opinion, that he can do. There's two things he can do. So the first thing he can do is he can sign with Eddie Hearn at Matchroom USA. Come to DAZN. The reason I say this is because just look at what happened to Daniel Jacobs. As soon as he signed with Matchroom, he got shot at Canelo. You know, he got the biggest paycheck of his life. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of talk about being on the other side of the street nowadays, and Charlo is definitely on the wrong side of the street in middleweight, because all the big names at middleweight are with DAZN. Charlo is with PBC, and we know that PBC is infamous for not wanting to do business with other promotions. Just look at the Bud Crawford and Errol Spence situation. They do not want to give Bud Crawford a chance at Errol Spence, and they say it's because he's on the other side of the street. Well, that's exactly what's happening with Charlo. So if he wants those big name fights, what he could do is he could go over to DAZN, and I'm pretty sure in under a year he would get a shot at Canelo. That would be no problem. The second thing he could do is he could build his name. He needs to build his name so that there's so much demand and so much pressure on Canelo that there will be no choice for him to have that fight, you know, just like Gennady Golovkin did. You know, a lot of people say that Canelo was ducking GGG for a long time, and then he eventually gave in due to all the pressure, GGG calling him out for so long, the public wanting that fight for so long. So that's what he has to do. He has to build his name so much to force Canelo's hand. There's a few ways he could do that. He could actually fight some names at middleweight. I mean, you got Andrade and you got Jacobs. I mean, Jacobs and Charlo have some history. They got into that altercation in the back of some fight. I forget what it was. And then you got with Andrade. You know, Andrade called him out back in the day, a long time ago. Actually went to one of his press conferences and took the mic and started calling out Charlo, and all that he said was that he wasn't a matchmaker or something like that, or he wasn't a promoter, so he had nothing to do with making the fights. Recently also Charlo was on an interview with the Boxing Voice, where he said that he didn't think, I'm paraphrasing here, but he didn't think that anybody knew who Andrade was, that he wasn't worth it. So, I mean, if you really, really want Canelo's fight, you gotta build your name. You gotta, you know, fight some of these guys that are relevant in your weight class, because lately, I'm sorry, but Charlo has been fighting a lot of cherry picks. You know, a lot of, I would say, C and B class competition. Dennis Hogan came up from junior middleweight to fight him, so this guy was undersized. Before that, Brandon Adams was also an undersized guy, and he was definitely a cherry pick. Korobov I mean, I understand he was a late replacement, but I mean, fighting people like this is not going to get you noticed. Before that, it was Hugo Centeno Jr. I mean, I honestly I had never heard of that guy before. Uh, so if you look back at Charlo's record, the only notable win that he's got is Julian Williams, and Julian Williams really isn't even that well known. Especially back then, he was not well known. Now he is because he's got a title, but I mean, Charlo, he's got to build his record. So whether you believe that Canelo is ducking Charlo, or whether you believe that Charlo is just not relevant, whatever your train of thought is, whatever camp you're on, both of these can be solved. Both of these problems could be solved if Charlo just builds his name up. If you think Canelo is ducking Charlo, if Charlo builds up his name, there's going to be pressure and there's going to be demand, and DAZN might try to make a move to get that fight done. Or if you think, if you're on the camp kind of like me a little bit, that Charlo just isn't relevant, that can also be fixed by Charlo building up his name. I mean, I want to see this fight. I'm not trying to throw shade at Charlo or anything like that. I think he's a good fighter, and I do want to see that fight. This is just what he has to do. He can't just be begging for the fight, because everybody is begging for that fight. Andrade has been begging for that fight. Everybody from 160 up to 175 wants that fight with Canelo, so he needs to separate himself from the crowd, and in my opinion, the only way to do that would be to either go with DAZN or get some notable wins on your resume. I know it sounds like I'm one of these Canelo protectors, but they say that they don't want to see the fight. I do want to see this fight, and I'm just stating the ways that I think it would happen. I mean, you also got to look at Charlo's actions. Don't look at what he says, because anybody could say they want to fight, but look at his actions. I mean, he was offered a DAZN deal by Eddie Hearn, and if he would have taken that deal, guarantee you he would have fought Canelo by now. So yeah, let me know what you guys think.